Today we're talking about a lens that I think every filmmaker should own, the Helios 442. Now, the Helios 442 is not a stranger to this channel. I've actually talked about it several different times, but recently I did just pick up the cine modded version of the lens by Iron Glass Adapters, and so I felt like it was a good time to revisit this lens and give you guys my opinion on, again, why I think this is a lens that every filmmaker should own. And so with that, we're going to break this lens down as we do always by the image, the build, and my overall thoughts / who I think it'd be useful for. And let's start by talking about the image. The Helios is just a classic vintage lens. It offers such a unique look. It gives you good center sharpness, but then does get softer as it goes out to the corners. And of course, you cannot forget about the swirly bokeh. Now with that, I do want to clarify, if you're not familiar, this is a 56mm lens, and so you are going to get some lens compression, and match that with the f2 aperture. This really is going to give you some good subject isolation, and with the f2 aperture, you're going to have some decent low light performance. The other thing I love about this lens is the flaring that it offers. Now with that said, because I am using the Iron Glass Cine modded version of this lens, I do have an anamorphic mod on the lens, and so you may see some oval bokeh and some additional flaring to mimic an anamorphic lens. But with that said, overall, I love how this lens performs. I've always loved how this lens performs. And so with that, let's go over and talk about the build of the lens. Now, this is where we can kind of deviate a little bit, because you can talk about the base Helios 442 lens, or we can talk about the cine modded version that Iron Glass does offer. And so that said, I am going to focus primarily on the cine modded version, but know that when you're getting the base lens, you are getting a small tank of a lens. You do get a decently long focus throw. You get the option to have a clicked and declicked aperture, and it is just a solid metal lens. It is using an M42 mount, and so you will need an M42 to whatever mount your camera is using. Going back to the cine modded version of this lens, I do appreciate the quality of the gears that they're using for the focus and iris ring, and they're keeping the iris ring declicked, so that's something you do want to keep in mind. And with it being adapted to PL, it just looks really badass in my opinion. Now, the only thing I'm not a huge fan of is the lens cap, as well as the step-up ring that's being used for the cine modification. The lens cap is plastic. I really wish it wasn't plastic, but the other thing I don't like is the step-up ring that's being used. It's a 77mm filter thread. I'm not a huge fan of that because I have to use an additional step-up ring to use my variable ND. So those are my only two gripes with the build of the lens. Otherwise, I'm really happy. Again, just looks super badass how they've cine modded the Helios 442. And so with that, what are my overall thoughts, and who would I recommend this lens to? Now, overall thoughts, this is a lens that I have had throughout all of the camera systems I've owned. And honestly, this is one that if I'm looking for something like that grungy look, kind of like the Batman, which we will say now, this lens was used, or a version of this lens was used in that movie. But if I want that more filmic, cinematic, or potentially grungy look, this is absolutely a lens I'm using. Now, who would I recommend this lens to? Honestly, if you're a filmmaker and you're looking at having a lens that offers something a little bit more cinematic or a little bit more filmic, giving you that more textured look between the low cost and how much character this lens does offer, I truly think that the Helios 442 is a lens that every filmmaker should have in their kit. And so that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to give it a like. And if you're digging the overall content from the channel, consider subscribing. As always, thank you for joining. Go and find your journey. Go embrace life. Peace.
I hate you so much.